On the bank of a creek in the Black Hills, a woman works yucca root between her hands until the water foams white. Her hair is clean. Her skin is oiled against the wind. Her camp sits on fresh ground, moved there on purpose 3 days ago. It is 1840-something, and she is cleaner than most people in Boston. Everything you were taught about hygiene on the Great Plains was written by people who needed the opposite to be true. 25 practices, documented by those who were actually there, buried not by time, but by policy. One question runs the whole length of this list. Which single practice proves the story was not ignorance, but strategy? By the end, the answer may not be what you expect. Now, before we go any further, tap that subscribe button. Make sure to stick around until the end. The last one changes everything. We are not going to the movies for this. We are going to the people who sat down and listened. Frances Densmore traveled to Standing Rock between 1911 and 1914. She carried recording equipment across the Dakota Prairie and sat with Lakota elders for days at a time. She wrote down what they told her, their songs, their words, their medicines, their daily life. James R. Walker arrived at Pine Ridge as the agency physician in 1896 and stayed nearly 20 years. He interviewed holy men named Finger and George Sword, men who trusted him enough to explain what their grandmothers had practiced for generations before any white man set foot on the northern plains. Cara Deloria was Yankton, Dakota. She spoke the language. She documented these practices from inside the culture, not peering through a tent flap with a theory already half-written. And George Catlin painted and wrote what he witnessed in the 1830s, before the reservation era changed everything. These are the voices we are following, not the Army dispatches, not the dime novels, not the Hollywood extras smeared in brown paint standing in the background. By the 1870s, the United States government was building a case. The argument was simple. These people are uncivilized. Uncivilized people do not own land, and the land underneath them held gold and grass and water that other men wanted. The Hygiene record says that case was fabricated from the start. And the women's practices, the ones observers bothered to write down the least, tell it loudest. Let us begin at the bottom and work our way up. Number 25. Cattail down and dried moss for the babies. Lakota mothers lined their cradle boards with cattail fluff or sphagnum moss. Both are naturally absorbent. The moss is also antiseptic. That is not folklore. Sphagnum moss was used on the battlefields of the First World War to dress open wounds when cotton gauze ran short. British field surgeons packed it into gashes and watched infection rates drop. The women who gathered it from creek banks on the northern plains had understood its properties for generations before a military surgeon confirmed them. Changed regularly, packed fresh, carried on the mother's back. These women had solved infant sanitation with materials that outperformed anything in a settler cabin. Densmore noted it at Standing Rock. Nobody put it in a textbook. Number 24. Smoke treatment of clothing and hides. A woman hung garments over a low fire built with sage or cedar and let the smoke work slowly through the fibers. She rotated the pieces so every fold caught the heat. Not ceremony. Maintenance. The smoke drove out lice and insects. It was repeated and deliberate. In the same decades, families packed into eastern cities were dying by the thousands from louse-carried typhus. Whole city blocks quarantined. The women on the plains had an answer. It just was not the kind of answer anyone writing policy in Washington wanted to acknowledge. Number 23. Moving camp as public health. Lakota bands relocated not only to follow the buffalo. They left fouled ground behind. Old fire pits, accumulated waste, depleted water. This is sanitation without buildings. Army officers noted, sometimes in grudging private letters, how clean a freshly established camp appeared. The ground swept, the lodges spaced for air and light. Then their official reports called the same people nomadic, as if moving were a deficiency. As if choosing fresh ground over contaminated ground were a mark of rootlessness instead of intelligence. The word nomadic was not a description. It was a legal argument. If they wander, they do not own. That single word cost a continent. Number 22. Rawhide parfleche cases for food storage. Dried meat kept apart from berries. Pemmican sealed dry and protected from contamination. The rawhide itself, brain-tanned and slowly dried, created a surface hostile to spoilage. Hassrick documented the system in his study of Sioux life. Every case had a purpose. Every food had a place. A woman packed provisions with the same care a pharmacist gives a shelf. One piece of spoiled meat in summer heat could put a child in the ground before the stars came out. Number 21. Willow twig tooth care. A twig of willow chewed soft at the end until the fibers splayed like bristles, used to scrub the teeth and the gums. The bark contains salicin, the natural precursor to aspirin. It fights pain and swelling, growing free along every creek on the northern plains. Densmore cataloged the plant uses at Standing Rock. Meanwhile, in the cities of the 1850s, people were pulling their own teeth with pliers and rinsing with whiskey. Number 20. Wild mint for the mouth and the stomach. Chewed fresh after a meal or steeped as tea. Good for settling the gut, freshening the breath, calming a body after heavy food on a cold night. Walker confirmed its regular use at Pine Ridge. A quiet little plant, everywhere across the grasslands, its sharp, clean smell rising when you crushed a leaf between your fingers. Doing real medicinal work that no one with a printing press ever thought to call medicine. Remember the question, which one proves the whole narrative was manufactured? We are still climbing. Number 19. Daily bathing in the rivers. George Catlin saw it with his own eyes in the 1830s. He painted it. He wrote about it in his published letters with no hedging. Men, women, and children bathing in the rivers. Not occasionally, not only in summer. Every day, because that was the standard. The claim that Plains people never washed is not a misunderstanding. It is an invention. Catlin's own words say so plainly in a book you can still read today. The invention survived 150 years because the men who needed it had louder voices and bigger presses. Number 18. Yucca root soap. Pound the root of soapweed, work it in water, and it foams. A rich, white, clean lather. The active compounds are saponins, the very family of chemicals sitting in your shampoo bottle right now. Lakota women use this for hair and skin, for washing children, and for washing themselves after a full day of work. Melvin Gilmore recorded it in his 1919 study of Missouri River plant uses. These women had soap. It grew out of the ground, and they knew exactly how to make it work. Number 17. Buffalo tallow and bear grease for skin and hair. Worked into the skin against sun and wind, and the kind of dry cold that splits your hands open. Rubbed through the hair for conditioning. Mixed with plant extracts when the need called for it. European observers wrote the word greasy in their journals and moved on. What they were looking at was the working equivalent of moisturizer and sunscreen, applied more faithfully than most settlers managed in a month. Catlin painted the sheen on their skin. He understood what he was seeing. The official record pretended otherwise. Number 16. The porcupine tail brush and the quill comb. Purpose-built tools for daily grooming. A porcupine tail, dried and shaped, made a brush with natural bristle that moved through hair without tearing. quills fashioned into fine-toothed combs. Hair care was not vanity. It was social, spiritual, and practical, all three at once. Walker and Densmore both noted the weight the culture placed on daily grooming. A woman's kit was as deliberate and personal as anything she carried. She made it, maintained it, and passed it to her daughter when the time came. We are halfway through, and the practices are getting harder to dismiss. That is not an accident. It is the architecture of the erasure itself. They buried the ordinary things first because ordinary things are easy to overlook. Nobody writes a headline about a comb. What comes next was harder to hide. Number 15. Red ochre as sun protection. The iron oxide in red ochre is a physical sunblock. The same compound is sold in modern mineral sunscreen today. Lakota women applied it to the face and to exposed skin as part of the morning routine. Catlin's paintings show it clearly. The warm red tone spreads smooth for protection. Ethnographic accounts confirm daily use, not just for ceremony. Every Western film that framed face paint as war paint was looking at a woman protecting her skin and calling her something she never was. Number 14. Brain tanning hides into antimicrobial clothing. Every piece of hide was processed by hand. The brain of the animal worked into the skin to soften it, then smoked over low coals until the material changed at a level you cannot see. The finished product resisted rot, breathed against the body, and lasted years. Hassrick described every step. The clothing that came out of this process was tougher and more sanitary than most factory cloth of the same century. It was women's work, and it was sophisticated chemistry performed without a single written formula. Number 13. Wound care with targeted plants, not guesswork. Echinacea used as an antiseptic on the plains long before it filled a shelf in a supplement aisle. Yarrow packed into a cut to stop bleeding. Specific root poultices drawn against infection and applied with a precision that came from watching an elder do it the same way 100 times before. Densmore recorded dozens of medicines with exact applications. Army surgeons more than once noted, in journals not meant for publication, that Lakota wound treatment produced results they could not easily explain. Number 12. Postpartum recovery. After giving birth, a Lakota woman entered a structured period of care designed by generations of mothers before her. Specific bathing with warm water and selected plants. Medicines applied by the elder women who stayed beside her. Rest, genuine rest, before returning to full work. Walker and Deloria both described the protocols. Think about the settler woman one valley over, back at the stove in 2 days. No one to wash her wounds. No medicine but whiskey and prayer. Puerperal fever killed thousands of frontier women because there was no structure around them at the moment they were most vulnerable. The Lakota women had built that structure, and it worked. Number 11. The menstrual lodge. During her cycle, a woman moved to a lodge set apart from the main camp. Absorbent materials, cattail fluff, and softened hide were used and disposed of with care. Deloria wrote about it from within the culture, not exile. Time among women, a rhythm built into the shape of every month as naturally as the moon that governed it. The boarding schools made its elimination a specific administrative goal. They filed paperwork to end it. They labeled it backward. It was community health with a living structure wrapped around it, and they could not allow it to stand. Number 10. The Iznati ceremony. A girl's first menstruation was not hidden or shamed. It was honored. Purification, instruction from elder women, public recognition before the whole community. Walker's informants at Pine Ridge named it among the most important Lakota rites. It included direct teaching about the body, about hygiene, about the duties of womanhood, handed from grandmother to girl in an unbroken line. Boarding school administrators made ending this ceremony a stated priority. They put it in writing. Of everything they could have targeted first, they chose the moment an elder teaches a young woman to care for her own body. Ask yourself what they were afraid of. The question is still open. We are getting close now. Number 9. Sage smudging. White sage, dried and bundled, lit at the tip, and blown out so the smoke rose slow and steady. Used to purify the body, the lodge, and everything inside it. The plant family that includes white sage carries documented compounds that kill airborne microbes and drive off insects. Walker heard it described by holy men who practiced it daily. Densmore identified the species by name. The boarding schools banned it outright, confiscated it from children's belongings, punished them for carrying a single dried sprig hidden in a pocket. And the women kept it alive anyway, in secret, for 100 years. That is not stubbornness. That is a woman who knows what works, refusing to let a man in a uniform tell her otherwise. Number 8. The Sweat Lodge, Inipai. Heated stones carried into a sealed lodge on forked sticks, each one glowing orange from the fire pit outside. Water poured, steam filling every corner until the air pressed against the skin like a living thing. The body sweating through every pore, used for deep physical cleansing, for spiritual renewal, for healing the sick. Walker's informants described the temperature, the duration, the songs, the protocols in detail. Women held their own ceremonies, apart from the men's, governed by their own prayers. A modern sauna achieves the same effect. The Lakota had it centuries before Scandinavian immigrants carried the idea to Minnesota. The difference is that nobody tried to outlaw a sauna. Number 7. Cedar purification of the home. Juniper and cedar burned inside the lodge to clean the air. A handful of shavings set on a coal and left to smolder. The smoke drives out insects and carries antimicrobial properties confirmed in laboratory settings. Lodges were aired, maintained, and treated on a regular cycle. More than one missionary, writing privately in a letter never intended for any audience but family, admitted the lodges were better kept than expected. A few confessed the lodges were cleaner than the government agency buildings standing right beside them. Those letters never reached a publisher. Number 6. Sweetgrass, braided tight, burned slow, the smoke thin and sweet, more like something remembered than something present. The smell of it marks a clean space, a prepared person, a right beginning. Sweetgrass was the first thing boarding school staff stripped from children's belongings when they walked through the door. Before the hair was cut, before the clothes were taken, the sweetgrass went first. They called it heathen. It was hygiene and prayer woven into the same braid, and when they pulled it from a girl's hands, they were not rescuing her from superstition. They were confiscating something that worked. Number 5. The teaching itself. Hygiene was not accidental among Lakota women. It was taught in sequence, elder to young woman, grandmother to granddaughter, aunt to niece. Every stage of a girl's life carried its own lessons, and every lesson had a voice behind it and a pair of hands showing the way. Deloria described the structure with the precision of someone who had lived inside it. The boarding schools did not need to outlaw every practice on this list one by one. They just severed the line, moved the girl 500 miles from the woman who would have taught her. Replace the grandmother's voice with a dormitory schedule in a language the child cannot speak. One generation of silence is all it takes to lose a world. Number 4. Water source management and waste separation. Camps were laid out with upstream water collection and downstream waste disposal. Latrines placed away from food and water. This is sanitation engineering. London did not adopt the same principles until the 1880s, after John Snow traced the Broad Street cholera outbreak to a contaminated pump, after tens of thousands died because the richest city on earth could not manage what Lakota women handled as routine. Army logistics officers wrote it down in their own field reports. Those reports were filed in storage boxes, not printed in newspapers. There is a wide difference between what a government records and what it chooses to repeat. Number 3. The full scope of women's plant medicine. Pull the thread all the way through now. Densmore alone cataloged more than 60 plant medicines used by Lakota and their neighbors, many prepared and administered by women. Echinacea, yarrow, wild bergamot, sage, willow bark. Modern pharmacology has confirmed the active compounds in many of them. The science caught up to the grandmothers. This was an empirical tradition tested across more years than most universities have existed, carried forward by women, and deliberately discredited by the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the boarding school system, and the missionary organizations who needed this knowledge reclassified as superstition. Because if it was medicine, the women who practiced it were not primitive. And if they were not primitive, the entire justification for what came next collapsed. Number 2. The campaign itself. Here, the shape of the story changes. The myth of the dirty savage did not drift into common knowledge by accident. It was constructed by people with names and offices and budgets to protect. Army officers praised Lakota cleanliness in private letters and condemned the same people in the same week's official dispatch. Missionaries admired women's practices in personal diaries and denied them in published mission reports. Boarding school health records show children arriving healthy and growing sicker after enrollment, not before. Tuberculosis, trachoma. Influenza. The before was healthier than the after, and the men who ran the schools had the numbers to prove it. Richard Henry Pratt founded the Carlisle Indian Industrial School in 1879. His stated purpose was kill the Indian and save the man. The first act when a child arrived was to cut her hair and take her medicine bundle. Not the second act, the first. That tells you everything about what they feared. It was never dirt. It was knowledge. Number 1. This is not one practice. It is every practice on this list held together, passed whole and alive from one woman to the next. A living system carried in memory and taught by hand. Practiced at the creek in early morning. In the lodge when the sage smoke rose. Beside the fire when a grandmother leaned toward a girl and said, "Watch, do it this way. This is how my grandmother taught me." That system is what was destroyed by a man holding scissors in a hallway in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, or Pierre, South Dakota, or Anadarko, Oklahoma. A specific girl walked through a specific door on a specific morning carrying everything her grandmother had given her. The braid was cut, the bundle was taken. The last federally funded boarding school did not close until 1969. Some ran into the 1980s. There are women alive today who remember the hallway. They remember what was in their hands when they walked in and what was gone when they came out. The record contradicts itself in ways that cannot happen by accident. Private praise and public contempt, written by the same hand in the same week. Health data that demolishes the story the institution was built to tell. Field reports that confirm the practices the published record denied. A military surgeon's private notebook describing wound care that worked, filed in the same week his commanding officer signed a dispatch calling the same people ignorant of basic medicine. The contradictions all point in one direction. The people called uncivilized had built something that worked. The people who named them that knew it worked. They dismantled it anyway because the proof threatened the policy, and the policy was worth more than the truth. The myth makers had names, And those names belong in the record alongside the women they erased. The Bureau of Indian Affairs, whose annual reports needed these communities classified as wards of the state to justify the Bureau's own budget and the salaries of every man who worked inside it. Richard Henry Pratt and the architects of the boarding schools, who needed the before photograph to look worse than the after, so donors would keep writing checks and legislators would keep approving funds. Hollywood, which inherited the government's narrative wholesale and stretched it across a century of unwashed extras, filthy camps, and savages who had never seen soap, until the caricature felt more familiar than the people it was built to replace. And the textbook publishers who printed the LIE so many times across so many editions that it stopped looking like a lie and started looking like something everyone had always known, something so settled it never needed a source or a footnote or a second opinion. The truth was in the creek water, cold and moving over stones worn smooth by 10,000 mornings just like this one. In the steam rising off the sweat lodge stones while a woman sang a prayer her grandmother had taught her. In the braided sweet grass and the clean, sharp smell it left behind on everything it touched. In the grandmother's hands, steady and practiced, showing a girl something that mattered more than any lesson written on a chalkboard in a language that was not hers. They saw all of it. They watched these women practice it in the open, without apology, without asking permission. And they wrote the opposite, not from ignorance, not from misunderstanding, not because the evidence was unclear, from need, because the land was worth more than the truth, and the truth was standing in the way. My answer to the question I asked at the beginning is this. The practice that proves the erasure was calculated is number 4, water source management and waste separation, because that is the one that most directly demolishes the core claim. They did not understand sanitation. They did. They solved it before London solved it. And that fact is the most completely absent from every textbook, every film, every popular account of Plains life ever published. You can find the sweat lodge in a documentary. You can buy sage in a gift shop. But the quiet engineering of a camp laid out with its water protected and its waste managed, the proof that these women operated a public health system with no bricks, no budget, and no authority but their own experience, that one was buried deepest, because it was the most dangerous to the story. The next time someone uses the word civilized, as though it only moves in one direction, remember the woman at the creek, the foam in her hands, the camp that was already clean before anyone rode in to save her from anything. There are grandmothers who carry what is left of this knowledge passed to them by women whose names never appeared in a single published book. They are still here. They are teaching their granddaughters again, in kitchens and at kitchen tables and beside rivers that still run cold through the same hills. The line was cut, but it was not killed. And they have not forgotten what was taken. Which one did they never teach you? Tell me in the comments. And if you want the real story behind another piece of the frontier that Hollywood never touched, the next one is waiting for you right now.